Morning, everybody. Thomas Blair here. I'm the lead designer for Crowfall, and today I'm going to go through harvesting and crafting in Crowfall. Starting off with harvesting. So you can see me here in our development test area. This is where we basically build everything and see if it works before we put it in the world. And what's in front of me is a bunch of harvesting nodes. And you can see there is ore nodes, stone nodes, the corpses of a bunch of things. They all look the same, but they will be of the various kinds. We have winter and summer versions out there. And then there's some of the older trees. We've updated the trees, and they are far more exciting. Now, when you go to harvest something in Crowfall, every player starts with a runestone axe that never goes away. So using an axe, you can get wood, and with that wood, you can make a hammer. And with the hammer, you can get some stone. With the wood plus stone, you can make a pick. And with the wood plus ore that you get with that pick, you can make a knife. And then basically you can harvest everything within the entire harvesting tree. So I will demo that now. So if you come up to a tree stump here, the hold to harvest comes up. You just press the button. You summon the axe and you start chopping. And as you're chopping, you will notice the little bar there is going down. That is the health of the tree. The tree just disappeared. Again, these are older assets, so you may see some placeholder stuff in today's live stream. Okay, and you see that it's spewing out wood. So I'm just going to run over what we call dubers and pick those dubers up, and now I have the wood. I'm going to go ahead and craft myself let's just use some of that wood. You right-click to drag things over here, hit the combine button, and let's make ourselves a hammer. Take the hammer, go to my character, equip the hammer. You see we have these new rune slots down here for all the harvesting tools. And now, if I go over to, let's say, a granite node, I can harvest some stone. Now, there's a bunch of cobblestone around the world that you can also harvest, but these are the specialty types of stone, and this first kind being granite. Let's just break this node and pick up the granite. Okay. Now, you may be asking yourself, why do they have 10 types of copper all lined up here? And the answer is, this is the varying degrees of loot drops that you will get based on the difficulty of the world. Our outer band worlds generally start down here in the 1, 2, 3, 4 ranks, and then we've got the middle, and then down over here we've got the shadow and the dregs. And as you go down this progression, you see a lot of bloom off these nodes. That's because we're still messing with bloom settings. It looks like a J.J. Abrams movie with all this lens flare going on. That's not going to be like that. Anyways, the node down here will have way more stuff in it, and I can show you that in a second. But since I haven't made a pick, you'll notice I get an error message every time I try to harvest. Let's go ahead and craft ourselves a pick. And I said that required wood, and stone. You'll notice this slot down here, when we get more into crafting, I'll talk about it, that it takes wood, stone, or ore. Based on what you put in there, this one recipe can produce 3 kinds of tools. That way we don't need to give you 3 recipes. We give you 1 recipe, and the recipe kind of grows with you and does what you want it to do. You just have to know what to combine in it to make what you want. Oh, I didn't take that out of my crafting window. Take it? Okay. Now I have a pick, and I can go ahead. Now, the basic stuff is low end. It makes what we call wooden runes. And those only last about 10 nodes right now, and you have to make a new one. You'll basically need to be making better tools as the cycle goes on to get better stuff. Now, that was a copper node using a crappy tool. If I were to use that same tool on, say, something more difficult, you'll notice that on gold, that tool doesn't even damage it. In fact, it doesn't even make sound. I'm guessing because I'm not damaging it. Yep. However, my stamina is still going down, and my tool is still taking decay, which means I'm going to wreck this tool pretty quick. Now, can't get silver with it either, but if I were to go down here to iron, you'll notice my sound starts up again, and the health bar of the node goes down. However, it's going to take me more than a full stamina bar to kill this tin node and get the delicious tin inside. Now, you also may have noticed that I really am not getting a lot of materials out of these nodes, and that's because my skills are very low. Over time, your skills will increase and you'll get more. In fact, I've got a potion in here that I can craft, and we're using these as our testing potions that will help me produce more stuff when I harvest. So it's an alchemy, harvesting potions. I'm going to make a Plentiful Harvest potion. Again, these are testing, so we just have you put some ore in there, and then we're just making sure that crafting works over and over and over again by making everybody craft these. So I take it, and I come out here. I can go ahead and drink it. The animators gave us a nice new drinking animation, and I have a buff now called Plentiful Harvest. Now, before when I harvest this node, you would have seen I probably got 2 pieces of copper out of it. This is boosting me to all the way to the end game, and let's see what comes out of this node now. Hopefully, oh, you'll notice I already got 2 off of that first destruction stage. There's another one. It looks like some dust I'm getting over there as well. Even more ore. And, ooh, we got some purple and blue. Look at that. So the difference between beginning harvesting and later game harvesting is pretty significant. So you're going to want to skill up. And let's just go ahead and finish off this tin node. I'm sorry, this was iron. Tin is the next one up. And I got some blues out of that. Very nice, very nice. Okay, so that's how harvesting is going to work. The materials, resources, are going to be used in all kinds of recipes. And I can jump into, let's talk about what crafting does. Okay, so when you come into the crafting window, we automatically open here to the basic tool. We'll talk about this again we'll talk about it right now. So this one type of node down here will take anything I want to put in there of the thing it's asking for. So if I want to put stone in there, I put some stone in there. If I want to put some wood in there, you can put wood in there. And if you want to put some ore in there, you can put ore in there if you want to make a knife, for example. Let's go ahead and make a knife. Okay. Now I have one of every kind of the tools. And I'm really not going to make any more tools in this demo. We're just going to go into the crafting. So before we go into actually the crafting, let's go back and remember berries us some crafting time. And remember berries are kind of, we think about things in the past and remember them being greater than they are. And then we just kind of dwell on that and remember that as the best thing ever. And we stop advancing. So I'm going to go back into the history of crafting as I remember it. And feel free to disagree, but yeah. So I got my start on crafting systems in EverQuest 1. I made the armor system for the Planes of Power armor. And then later on in Swig, I ran an entire player city based off of crafting. So it can be said I really love crafting systems. And there are essentially 3 kinds that I want to talk about. So from the original crafting systems back in the early days, you basically had a system where A plus B equaled C. So you would use 2 things, hit a combine button, and it would produce something else. And then it got more advanced, it would be 10 things, and you hit combine, and it produces something else. And that kind of model went through the EverQuest, the Camelot, the WoWs, World of Warcraft, into that kind of one of the branches. The other branch was the crafting as combat branch, which is A plus B equals C, but we're going to make you play a minigame or do some type of combat to get your item. And EverQuest 2 was one of the first ones that I remember that did this, and that was action combat. In fact, the Forge could kill you if you had enough fails during their little combat minigame. And then Vanguard went on and took that and they turned it into turn-based combat where you had mathematical problems you had to solve, you had little puzzles, but it was turn-based, it wasn't actiony, and then it produced an item. And then you have the third branch, which is more of the Star Wars Galaxies model, which had to deal with manipulating the stats of the items and producing the result. And then it was about running your shop on top of that. So shopkeeping kind of got embedded into that. It was actually Ultima Online and Galaxies that followed this model. And those are your three kind of branches. Now, which model did we take? We are going to kind of follow more of the Galaxies Ultima Online branch of the tree and kind of dive deeper into what those systems could have become 10 years later. So, yeah, I think that's enough member bearing of the past. And I will show you where the Crowfall crafting kind of takes the Galaxies one to the next level. So, with that being said, I'm going to drink some potions and make it easier for me to craft because, again, we've set these to higher skills than I can craft. And we're going to make a sword today. So under blacksmithing, weapon components, we're going to start with making ourselves a couple metal bars. And the way that our system works is I'm just requiring ore, and ore for these slots. Now I can put copper, copper, copper in here, and I'm going to get one type of bar. Or I can put copper, iron, iron in here, and I'm going to get another kind of bar. Now, the different kinds of bars are going to have different stats. So if I make copper, 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 hit the combine button, I'm going to get a pure copper bar, and right now it has critical hit chance on it. We're probably going to change these stats, and so don't be surprised when copper produces something different in the future. We haven't quite settled on that. Now, after I made my combine, you'll notice I had a success. So now I go to the experimentation screen, and I have, it looks like, 8 points here that I can spend between these two lines. Experimenting on the grade is going to raise the stat if I get a good success. So I run the experiment. Ooh, I get an amazing. And that raised the value 8.05. And you'll notice over here, the critical hit chance went up 0.052. Now I can choose to gamble and go a little more. You'll notice I can put all the points in at once if I wanted to, but you'll notice my risk value down here goes way up, which means my chance of success goes down and the type of success that I'm going to get goes down. So let's just see what happens. Moderate success. So I spent 7 points and I only ended up gaining about 21%, but that's still good enough for us. I go into the design screen here, and I can name this whatever I want to. So I can name it Copper Bar 1, and I can go ahead and make the item. Now, some of these features that I'm showing you, since this is our first phase of crafting, we're calling it phase 1, it doesn't have things like crafting stations. It doesn't have the factories that we're going to put in that allow you to run mass amounts of these with the blueprint option. So you're not quite playing or seeing what it's going to be, but this is our first draft of it, so we can start experimenting and feeling the system out. Hey, what are these boots? Oh, that's dust. You'll notice any icon that we don't actually have a real icon for now comes up as a boot. Yeah, we'll get to it. So let's go ahead and make ourselves another metal bar, but let's use gold now. Now, the gold bar produces support power. I'm not really going to need that for my knight long-handed sword here, but I'll just show you. You could do it if you wanted to. We're going to run the experiment. And you know what? I'm going to explain going one at a time versus all here. So if you put 1 point in there, it's low risk. However, every time you run the experiment, your build complexity goes up by 1, which means that you can do lots of low-risk ones. However, your build times are going to go up. Now, that's not so important when we have the artificial times we have in now, 7 and 10 seconds. It's not going to stay like that when we get to the game long term. So what that means is you are increasing the amount of time that's going to take for a factory to produce a lot of these. However, you could get a better bar by playing it safe. Let's just go 2 to finish off. You'll notice I have dramatically increased that. I've doubled the amount of time by running lots of experiments on it. Again, it's in your hands when you choose to make this, if you want to go risky and go for lots of points, or if you want to play it safe and go one at a time. Okay, now we are going to make a copper-copper-gold combination and see what that gives us. Oh, that gave us a metal alloy bar, which means that there isn't a valid recipe for that, but it still has some stats. Basically, we're putting some experimentation in here, and I'm just going to go through quickly. to show you that different combinations on the same recipe can produce different results. That was very important to us. So let's go with gold, gold, copper, which produced a rose gold bar. And rose gold right now is giving me critical hit damage, which I like that. I'm going to spend all the points. 100% risk, not really optimal. Great. Still, that's actually a really good one. So let's say I really like this rose gold bar result. At this screen, you'll notice there's a Make Blueprint button. Now, what a blueprint is going to do is it's going to give me an exact copy of what this thing produced, and it's going to have some number on there. So a blueprint can only make a certain number of exact copies of that thing. So let's say that number is 100. I could now go make 100 of these bars by putting that blueprint on my factory, telling my thrall to go to work, and of course, I have to have loaded out the exact same resources. So in this case, I used legendary gold and legendary copper. So I would need to give that thrall, to make 100, he would need 600 legendary gold and 300 legendary copper to produce 100 of this exact same rose gold bar. However, that is the manufacturing game for the crafters. They will be running their factories, loading them out, continually trying to make the best version of something they can, and then make lots of it. Now, when this gold bar comes out, we don't have it in the tooltip yet, but it has a serial number. And that serial number identifies this rose gold bar as a unique thing. So when I use it in further recipes and make a blueprint of them, those recipes are going to require that exact same serial number. So for those of you who played Galaxies, you might remember that system. So if I were to take this rose gold bar and make a weapon crossguard out of it, and then I really like those results and made a blueprint of it, I would need the exact same metal bar to make that blueprint work. If I didn't have it, I couldn't make that blueprint work. So that means you're going to be making lots of factory runs and then carrying those factory runs down the chain and then carrying those down the chain if, let's say, you want to make a factory run of swords. Because a sword, as I'm about to show you, takes a considerable amount of components. So if you go into weapons, we were going to make a one-handed sword. A one-handed sword requires a hilt and a weapon blade long. So I go back to my weapon components and I look up weapon blade long, and it requires 3 metal bars, okay? And my hilt requires a weapon grip, a pommel, and a crossguard. Now each of those requires a metal bar. So let's start with making a pommel. Success. And you'll notice that my stat from the bar carried up into this component. So that's the whole super cool thing about the Crowfall crafting system, is stats that you put on the components carry up to the next stage. And in some cases, we add some stats here. So the pommel inherently built into it has a weapon efficiency stat. And that's a negative number, and you want to drive that number as far negative as you want. So now when you come into the experimentation screen, you'll notice there's 3 things I can experiment on. Sheen, which is going to experiment on the stats that were brought up. Efficiency, which is the stat that was introduced at this level. And durability, in case I want to make the swords at the end of the day last longer. But I can't put points in all of them. In fact, I only have 8 points, so I have to choose. Now, because I used legendary materials, I can experiment up to 10 points. So let's put 4 points into Sheen. Good success. You'll notice my critical hit damage went up substantially. So at each stage, the stats keep going up and up and up. But I'd kind of like some efficiency too. Oh, failure. Rah! What that means now, I just spent those 4 points and I got nothing out of it. Which means at the end of the day, there's no way in hell I'm going to make a blueprint of this. But since I'm going through the process, we'll just keep going. And weapon pommel. Boo. Yeah, you can name your thing, your items, whatever you want to name them. It was a really good feature that we used in Galaxies as a crafters, so we could tell what was what, and it was a way to organize your stuff. Now, You can't cheat customers because the item will always say what it is a base template of. So they can't name a one-handed sword a two-handed sword and sell it to you as a two-handed sword. You just look at it and say, oh, it's a one-handed sword. But the name may say whatever the hell they want the name to say. So we made our pommel. But there's something I wanted to show you really quick with the metal bar. I'm going to use lower quality resources this time. I'm just going to use green resources. And you'll notice that the base stats are the same. It still starts with a 0.5. But because I used green quality, I can only put 4 points in a line. That means the quality of your resources is very important because it's going to act as a ceiling on how high you can experiment up an item. You may actually have more points than you can spend on an object. Oh, wow. I'm on a failure chain here. Let's just spin through it. In fact, let's make this one, and I will show you with a pour. Yep, take it. We don't like you, so we're going to delete you. Bye-bye. Eventually, we'll probably have some type of salvage where you can get resources back from things that you don't want, but right now we don't. So let's make a metal bar out of poor quality copper. It still starts with 0.5, but I can only put 2 points into this one. So again, the quality of your resources is very important. Okay? Enough said about that. Let's go on and continue making our hilt. So we are going to need a pommel, a crossguard, again, this one has efficiency, and this was the support power one, so let's just put it all into efficiency. Where do you want to spend your points? This is kind of the min-maxer's dream for crafting because right now, I think we have 60 different stats on the various metal bars. So whatever your customers want, you as the craftsman can be the guy that specializes in making critical hit and very efficient weapons. And somebody else can specialize in making the support power. And it just happens to go with what type of metals you have access to. And where you want to make your stuff. What does the market demand? It's all on the crafter. Okay, so for the weapon grip, I need plank or leather. So those are made by a different profession. Let's make ourselves a plank here. No, it's actually under... Boop. It's under woodworking components. Let's go ahead and make ourselves a plank. Failure. So, no, my potions are still running. There is a base chance that you have, no matter what your skill is, to fail. And then the more you skill, you can also raise yourself up. Basically, the formula looks for the difficulty of the object, your skill, a little bit of random, and you can always mitigate the random by raising your skill. In this case, I failed. But it cost me 3 wood that I have clearly made myself plenty of. And this is kind of a treasure trove for a crafter someday. They would look at this inventory and go, oh my god, that's a lot of good stuff. Now again, you're not going to have access to the experimentation screen unless you are at a crafting station. So don't worry about that. Okay, back to blacksmithing. Let's make ourselves that grip. And use the plank that we just made. And that plank had critical hit chance. Combine. Good one. And that stage added attack power. So we give you attack power for free on the grips. Ooh, and amazing. Nice. Let's put the rest in that critical chance. Or I'm sorry. Grade. Grade is the actual stat that we're giving you at that level. So that's the attack power. Sheen is from the previous one, which is critical hit chance. Let's go ahead and make that. Now, things that you can do at that design screen, if an item has a multiple appearances for it, if it has a color tint selection, we will have another box in there. So if you want to put a dye in there to dye a sword or your armor, the guild colors, you can totally do it at that screen. If there are multiple versions of the one-handed sword and people like a specific one, they can set it up there. If there's rewards from the past that you have access to an appearance, you might be the guy who can make those and no one else can. So if you look at all my components, you'll notice there's various stats on them. Let's go ahead and put them all in to make our hilt. Great. So now you'll look, oh my god, I have all of the stats from the previous stages right there. And then let's just make them better. I hope. Yes, moderate success. That keeps us going upwards. Let's play it safe for these last ones. Moderate. Great. Success. Success. So, again, you will be making hundreds of these things, going for the perfect roll, because I know how crafters are, because I was one of them. And you do everything you can to raise that skill, get the best resources you can, and crafting stations will have thralls socketed in there. There is the idea that thralls in the stations have stat buffs, so you can have different versions of them. So you're going to want to get the best things to make the best stuff, because every one of these that you make is going to have your name on it. So people who make good stuff, when you kill an opponent and you take his weapon, and you're like, wow, that's a good weapon. This guy makes good stuff. Maybe I should go find him. Look at that. Okay, so now we need 3 metal bars to make our long blade. Okay. Success. Now this one's not very good, of course, because it had some of those resources in it that weren't so good, but it'll be fun. You'll make much better ones. Now, you'll notice that this is a blade. The stats that this guy comes with is a min damage, max damage, and sheen. So sheen is always the previous stats. Let's just experiment on max damage. It's not in the tooltip yet. We're going to add it down there. You'll notice that it's got a 50 to 30 damage range. Let's go ahead and put 3 points. Success. And now you notice it's 50 to 312. Let's keep putting points in there. Moderate success. It's up to 336 there. And the final 2 points. Ooh, failure. Once again, it didn't go down because it wasn't a critical failure, but it was a failure, which means I spent my points and I didn't get anything out of it. I'm definitely not going to want to make a blueprint of it, but I may make it because somebody always needs swords. Always need them swords. Let's go ahead and make it. Craft time's going to happen. You're going to have stats that increase your assembly chance, which is the first phase, stats that increase your experimentation chance, stats that increase the amount of points you get, stats that reduce the amount of build time it takes to build something, and they're all going to be in the skill tree, and you'll train them up over time. Also, a lot of these recipes will come from the skill tree. In fact, that was a question in the first live stream was, can a crafter make everything? Well, you can train the skill trees because they're at the account level. When you go into a vessel, we may have chosen to say, hey, you know what? The Forge Master has no skill or knowledge of woodworking, so he wouldn't be able to make woodworking recipes. He's actually going to have somebody in his guild or team make those recipes, or he's going to have to buy them on the market. Probably, so what we called them is factory crates. And a factory crate would be, if it was made in a factory, it might have 50 of these long blades in it with the same serial number, but it takes up a smaller inventory footprint. Now, here's the weapon blade. Let's go make ourselves the sword. Weapons, one-handed sword. Put the blade in there. Put the hilt in there. I still have my crafting potions running in the background. I can see them running through this little break right here. Let's combine them and hope for the best. Yes, we got our sword. Here's all the stats that I've worked with along the way. And now, once again, at the final level, I can experiment on the min-max damage, the durability of it. Durability isn't working in the tooltip yet. Again, we just got this working. So this is our starting point, and it only gets better from here. And then sheen, which is all of the stats that came up. So I'm going to experiment on Sheen, 3 points. Failed. Ugh! Wasted my points. Critical failure. Oh no! So critical failures can take you down. However, they can't take you down on the previous stages. So, yeah. So these stats come into this stage, and pretty much that's the baseline, even if you get a critical failure. But critical failures are there. All right, so great success. So assuming I had good stats, you saw that 2 points got my attack power up by a significant chunk. But that's the crafting game. People who really like doing that are going to min-max the crap out of this and make the absolute best stats. Oh, no, we still have points left. Let's spend those points on max damage. Failure. Man, I am not rolling well. Also, oh, my potions dropped. I can't see them in the background here. That's probably why. Basically, experimentation, every item has a difficulty on how hard it is to experiment on. Generally, things like swords are the final combine. They have the highest difficulty, so you need the most skill to make it. That's one of the other unique things we're doing is we're letting people with no skill try to make it, and it's on them if they actually do well. So go ahead, try and make it. You may not have the skill for it, and it may cost you. I'm just going to activate those potions again for the next thing we make. So this thing will take us about a minute to make, and again, I wouldn't use this sword because the stats didn't come out kind of like I wanted it to, but it's a sword. It has stats. Give it to your friend who just started playing because they need gear too. In fact, everybody needs lots of gear. There isn't gear that's coming from monsters. The monsters will drop additives, and I can show you an additive here once this thing stops crafting. And those will enhance your gear. So the combatants will go out and they'll be killing stuff, and they'll bring back those additives and give them to their crafters or sell them to the crafters based on your relationship with your crafters. Ideally, you always have a good relationship with the guy who's building your gear because you're going to need more. Your gear is going to break. You're going to die. Depending on the world you're playing on, you may lose it. Or you just may come into a world like the Dregs and you need that first set of gear because you can't bring any gear in. So we take it. Now we have our sword. And just to show you that it actually works, we're going to go ahead and equip it. And you'll notice the appearance changed to that one. So it works end to end. Hooray! Okay, so I'm going to show you some armor crafting. Because armor crafting recipes, now my goal is for you to only ever get one of a kind of a recipe. We don't have that whole tiering system that you become so familiar with in traditional MMOs. We just give you a plate chest recipe, and you'll notice, holy smokes, there's a lot of stuff here. So there's a bunch of additive things, and this is the symbol for additive. So this green plus right now, and we're kind of iterating through this design on how it looks. Again, this is just to show you early on that you don't need to put those things in there. In fact, if you just got this recipe, all you would need is copper, iron, and hide, which I have, copper, iron, and I've got some bear hide, and I can go ahead and make this recipe. And if I make this recipe, it's going to have mitigations, and it's going to have these stats, but these are the inherent properties of plate. So plate reduces the amount of damage you do, and it slows you down when you wear it. But it has better mitigations at a baseline than other types of armor. Now I can experiment on the physical mitigations, the elemental, the organic, or the durability. Let's experiment on the physicals. And you'll notice my physical line goes up. Okay, so we actually made a pretty good baseline breastplate there. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to make this breastplate. And then I'm going to equip it to show you that it actually works. Because that's very important to me. Things working. So we take it, you're the character, I'm going to put my sword back on, and I equip the breastplate, and it changes my appearance. Believe it or not, that is something that's very difficult to make happen. I'm glad it works now. So, that is a baseline breastplate. And it has no essentially magical properties. Now, to do that, you would have to craft these optional things. In fact, what is a metal sheet? Well, a metal sheet, wow, the metal sheet recipe looks like it takes ore, but you can also put armor layers into it. It requires a fuel called coal. Let's just start making some coal. Coal and other fuels that we make are generally going to be what you do with your poor quality stuff. Like if you're chopping a bunch of gray wood off of a tree, you're going to convert that into fuels. And fuels don't require the same serial number stuff that the components do. So you can just make a lot of it, use up all of your junk resources on making fuel stuff. Okay, so I've got a couple coals. They stack because we don't care about them. And in the math of the experimentation, there are certain items we can flag that don't cause you to their quality level to contribute to the formula. Fuels are one of those things. So back to our metal sheet. Let's go ahead and make ourselves an armor layer. Okay, this just takes hide, ore, and a fluxing stone. I'm going to put granite in there as the fluxing stone. Now, this one's missing its symbol, but whatever fluxing stone you use will determine the type of mitigation that this thing comes out at. So, I'm using granite, so it's going to make a physical layer, which is going to give me slashing, crushing, and piercing. Now, the quality wasn't very good, so I only get 2 points to put into that. Oh, and they were a failure. Bummer. Bummer! Okay, now we've got a physical layer. It's going to craft. Again, if you use marble, slate, travertine, limestone, it's going to change it into an armor layer of one of those types of slashing, crushing, physical. So it would just be armor layer slashing. This is kind of a generic layer. Okay, go to our metal sheet. Let's go ahead and add that layer in there. And I want some ore. And I can put an additional 2 layers in there if I want to. Also requires the coal. Hit the combine, success, and now we get a gold sheet. Gold sheets give you support power. Just like the metal bars, the combination of metal you put in there determines what kind of stats in it. In fact, essentially what we're making here is we're making magical statted armor. But you don't have to. If all you really want to make is baseline mitigation armor, just use the baseline components. This is what I would call specialties for your specialty customers. So, back to the armor. Let's go back to our plate chest, and you'll notice I can now put 1 metal sheet in there, and that's going to give me support power. Now let's go back and let's make another sheet. Let's go ahead and make a sheet with no layer, and we're going to use copper, 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 and a coal. We don't want to split you. Combine, and this made this made hit points. We like hit points. We like hit points in our armor. So again, it may look small. Hey, it's only 11 hit points, but once it goes through multiple experimentation phases, that number is going to get multiplied all the way up the chain. So it's very important. Start with good stuff. Okay, so into the armor, back to our plate chest. Let's use both of our metal sheets. And we need copper, iron, and that hide. And combine it. Veil. Happens. Let's go back and make some copper, copper, copper. Oh, I need my coal too. Success. Okay, this one gave us 13 points. It was riskier, and we used all our points at once, so ended up pretty good. And to speed this up, we're just going to go with 1, just to show you. Put that in there. Copper, iron, bear. Combine. Success. And now you'll notice, in addition to the baseline properties of the item up here, we now have max hit points up there. And, unlike the previous experiments, I can now experiment on those stats. So, the failures, killing me. Again, I went for a risky roll. I chose to do that. I could have played it safe and gone 1 point at a time, but that would have increased my complexity, which would have raised my build time. It's all on me and those choices that I make. Again, how do you want to make your gear? Do you want to wait a little longer and play it safer? Do you want to go for big numbers and risk? That's part of the game. Okay, so now I have plate armor that has hit points, but I didn't get to experiment on the mitigations. So in fact, this has more hit points, but less mitigations. Also because I didn't use layers in it. So the crafting of stuff like armor is as complicated or as simple as you want to make it, and what the market demands. If people don't want to buy baseline mitigation armor, then you're going to end up making the more complicated things. And that is pretty much end-to-end of the crafting. There were more questions in the other live stream. I don't have them all. I can get you on the forums if you have any questions. And I hope you have fun. I'm really looking forward to the next phases, which are crafting stations, and the phase after that, which is the factory version of this added into the system. We have a great base. It's all about how you want to make your items, and at the end of the day, what kind of stats you want to have on them. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And I hope you enjoy playing it as much as I do, making it and making these recipes, because making the recipes for you guys to make is a whole lot of fun too. I mean, I'm up late at night, and you can ask my wife, and she gets angry with me. But, for example, last night I made the pistol, and yeah, and I can't wait for you guys to play and just make all this stuff. So, again, Crowfall Crafting, it's coming to Big World. If you're in the Big World playtest right now, you can go ahead and playtest. You don't have access to this kind of quality of materials. At some point, we'll get it in there so you can. However, you can use the potions. When you're harvesting, I highly recommend using the potions. Use the Plentiful Harvest, the critical amount, and the critical chance, and you should be getting a lot of good resources. And, yeah. So, hope you enjoy it. Can't wait to see you in game. Bye.